It doesn't look like a war zone, just an English town with a giant shed in the middle. But Barrow-in-Furness is home to Britain's most strategically important military shipyard. Here is where they build submarines that can wipe out cities. Over the past 15 years, we've come to associate warfare with sandy places and infantry soldiers fighting on foot. But if Vladimir Putin's Russia is now a threat, if you want to face up to it, you're not even in the game unless you've got somewhere like this. This is where they built the boats that carry Trident missiles and where they'll build their replacements if we can afford it and if we really want it. Britain's nuclear deterrent is not just Trident submarines, it's the attack subs, like this one leaving Barrow, whose job it is to find and follow Russian submarines. And it was until cancelled an airborne surveillance system called Nimrod. This is PR footage, but the real, silent, undersea game of cat and mouse is going on 24 hours a day, just a few miles off Britain's coastline, with increased intensity. But big war machines cost money. Britain is supposed to spend 2% of its GDP on defence, but many think that's unachievable in the current climate. At the Barrow Working Men's Club, nearly everybody's worked in or for the yard.
I worked in the brass foundry, which made a lot of the gearboxes and castings and that, you know.
These men lived through an era when creating high-skilled naval engineering jobs was in the national interest.
We're not putting out Nissan Micras and we're not putting out Ford Focuses. We're putting out submarines that are at the ultimate maximum of everything. You know, nobody else builds anything like we do in Barrow.
Here they know that once you lose the skills to make strategic weapons, they're gone for good. So the decisions the next government has to take will be strategic, and that's the real problem. After the election, the government will launch a strategic defence review. In the corridors of the defence establishment, I watched them try 5 years ago. The lords, the generals and the civil servants. Nobody predicted ISIS, nobody predicted Putin. The architecture's familiar. The situation completely changed. With money tight, at the Royal United Services Institute, a defence think tank in the heart of Whitehall, they're thinking hard about what to do. If you walked across Whitehall to the Foreign Office and said, OK guys, on the map, where's the biggest threat to Britain? Where do you think their finger would go?
I think some of the people in the Foreign Office would point to Russia and indeed the potential for great power war and the sort of very dangerous conflict we saw during the Cold War. But some others, so they wouldn't always agree, some of them would also point to the wider ISIS, Middle East.
In places like this, surrounded by history, they're all too well aware that in 2013 Parliament made history by rejecting a government request for powers that could have allowed British forces to fight in Syria. However the force is configured, the problem is British people seem to have lost the will to deploy their armed force into risky situations. Can that go on?
I'm not sure whether it's the British people that have lost that will, but I think certainly after Iraq and Afghanistan, people have lost the will to get involved in quagmire situations. People have lost the appetite for that, I think quite rightly actually, because it wasn't very successful. The danger is we may have gone too far in the other direction and we're not prepared to take reasonable risks in order to achieve strategic objectives.
The more you look at the flashpoints of the world, the more you see how little military force alone can do. In Europe, the near bankruptcy of states like Greece and the fractious handling of it have eroded the EU's ability to act in concert. And with Russia, this is no mere rerun of the Cold War. The Soviet Union was predictable, Vladimir Putin is not. One former general thinks the electorate is sleepwalking through a period of acute danger.
What I think is completely missing is an understanding in national debate that we really do face, I think, a game changer in what Putin has done. And if this dynamic got out of control, if he did decide to have a crack at the Baltic states, people really need to understand that that means war.
But Britain's will to wage war has waned. In Scotland, the movement that delivered a 45% yes vote for independence is strongly aligned with the move to scrap Trident. And the breakup of the UK is only one heart of darkness question facing defence planners. For all the pomp surrounding Britain's military, the establishment is split over how strong a line to take with Putin, and the stream of Brits who would rather wear the uniform of Isis than the Guards has sent a chill down the spine of those responsible for our security.
It's one thing to say that Vladimir Putin's Russia and the Islamic State are new and major threats, but it's another thing altogether, especially for people in the military establishment, to understand that large numbers of British people have no problem with Vladimir Putin and that a small number of British Muslims support the Islamic State.
Neither a Trident sub nor an infantry platoon is much use if the nation paying for them doesn't want them to fight, and if belief in Britain as a global power is on the wane.